Brandon. Hey, Bill.
Hey,
Hi, Tammy.
Hi, guys. We've got lots of people recording today, so that is fantastic. It was not going to happen again, is it, Seth?
nope. That was never mind.
It
Stuff
was,
happens.
yes, that is exactly what Mr. Bill just said. Oh my gosh, I think I have like five people recording and I haven't even started. Nobody wants to miss this conversation. I love it. Okay, let's just get this party started, shall we? Okay, I'm recording. Yep, I'm recording. Okay. Hi. I am very excited for today's call because Purpose Pursuers, we're all about once a month getting together and helping you. If you're interested in pursuing your purpose, we're all about helping you do that. Because let's face it, out there in the world, people will tell you all kinds of things that relate to discovering your purpose. However, do they follow up with tips on how to do it? And I was talking to someone recently who she knows it's important. She's in her 50s. She's transitioning out of a career, long time career, and she knows, bless her, she understands that it's important to do that self-study before just jumping into another career. However, when she tried to go do that self-study on her own, she was met with an extreme wall of overwhelm because what happened is for every question she tried to answer, more questions were raised. Well, the five of us on this call, we have all gone through the effort, through the blueprint process of discovering our purpose, and we continue to do so. So we're not perfect. We're not done. However, we know what that beginning stage looks like. And so we get on this call once a month on the fourth Wednesday at noon Pacific, this same Zoom link to help you find your purpose. Because that is what all of our purposes are involved in. All of us, all five of us, our purposes are unique. And yet, each of us, if you were to take the time to look into each one of our purposes, it is directly related to helping other people find and use theirs in everything that they do. Before I get into the actual topic and tip of today, guys, is there anything you'd like to add to the beginning of this call? Any other information that you feel like would be helpful? Yes, go ahead, Frank.
Just that word you said, I get that sometimes when I'm talking to people. They go, "Well, the question is, are you interested?" Was your word. Are you interested in finding your? I think everybody's interested in finding out what their purpose is. One, they don't know how to go about doing it. They have no confidence in that area. There's some shame or embarrassment or whatever, that fear of disclosure. But everybody's interested in what they're interested in. It's like, could they use some help, maybe? Yeah. So that's where we get to come in. Yeah.
Oh, I love that perspective. Yes. Anybody else? All right. Hi, Bill. Yeah, what you got?
I was going to just start.
Oh,
Just
who
start.
are you? Okay,
There's
excellent. Let me,
an awful lot of vacillation over this topic, and people don't know where to start, when to start, how to start. And of course, we have a process for that. But even so, people almost are overwhelmed at the beginning of it just by virtue of what the question is.
agreed. I agree, which is why on this, thank you, Bill. That's exactly why on these Purpose Pursuer webinars, we're trying to break that one big question, what is my purpose, into smaller questions like bite-sized elephant pieces that you can then, anybody then can go out and study their life. And I would have to say, before we give the tip of the day, that is the one requirement, isn't it? That the person who pursues their purpose is introspective or at least willing to be. You must be willing to study yourself and you must be open to seeing yourself in a way that you've never seen yourself before, or the world has seen you. The world has many opinions as to who you are and how you add value. You might have your own. So the purpose journey is about setting all of that aside and being willing to dig underneath all those labels and roles and stories and histories and discovering who you really are as God designed you to be. So anybody else want to jump in, or should I go ahead and introduce the tip of the day? Okay. Thanks. Thanks, Beth. All right. So the tip of the day, what we're going to do today is we are going to discuss characteristic number 1 of 8 of the purpose characteristics. So there are 8 purpose characteristics that came to me back in 2006, so 20 years ago. And I've been using them ever since. They have stood the test of time, and they have stood the test of unique purposes over and over and over again. This characteristic out of the 8 is the only one that is actually based in time. And the time that it's based in, the framework that it's based in, is your childhood. And when I say childhood, when we talk about childhood, we're talking about anywhere between as far back as you can remember, clear up through high school-ish. Any time before you are actually an adult. Let's just consider those 18, 19 plus years. Any memories you have of that period of time, or any stories you might hear from your parents, your siblings, your friends, any of that would be helpful research for this particular characteristic. So again, let me remind you that there are actually 8 characteristics of purpose. This is only one of them, and it is the only one that is based in time. So what each of us are going to do, and I'll get the party started, is we're going to share a story from our childhood. Again, anywhere from as far back as we can remember, clear up through like 18 or 19. My story actually comes from when I was in middle school, and we're going to share that. And then guys, just so you know, just to give you a forewarning, I'm going to ask you 2 follow-up questions. So each of these lovely gentlemen have come to today's call with a story from their childhood that they're going to share with you. The second question, guys, that I want to ask, not only what was the story that you remember, but the second question I want to ask is, what does that story suggest about you? And those of you listening, those of you interested in pursuing your purpose, this is the 1-2 punch that we look for in purpose research. What are the stories? Now, this particular purpose characteristic is based in time, but the others are based in the now and in the past too. It could involve anything. The rest of the characteristics are not bound in time. But what we're looking for are stories, stories, stories. We want to hear your stories because your stories suggest purpose. If you're looking carefully enough, you will find elements of your purpose in all of your stories, every single one of them. Whether you came out shining or whether you look back upon it with regret, doesn't matter. Purpose is in everything that you do, every story you experience. So guys, I'm going to ask you what your story is. Second question, what does that story suggest about you and your purpose? Third question I'm going to ask you guys is, how are you applying those things that that story suggests about you and your purpose? How are you applying it to today? So a couple of caveats that's important. When we talk about application of your purpose, we are talking about 24/7, 365. Doesn't matter whom you're with, what you're doing, even if you're by yourself. You're able to apply your purpose every minute of every day if you choose to. So that's important to note. Guys, any questions about my questions? I love it, how adaptable you guys are. It's seriously awesome. All right, so I'm going to get started. So my story, as I mentioned, comes from when I was in middle school. I have one sibling. She's my sister, and she's about 3 years older than I am. So I'm in middle school. She and her friends are in high school. And what would happen, now she told me this story. I don't remember this. So it's good to get stories from other people. So she told me that when she would bring her friends over, these are high school friends, 3 years at least, my senior. So these girls, these very highfalutin high school girls, would come over to our house to visit with my sister, supposedly, right? Well, Kim, my sister, says that every once in a while she would notice that her friend was gone. Her friend was missing. They came over to spend the night or whatever at our house, and where's her friend? And she would find her friends with me, talking to me, some lowly junior highest. All right, so now that's unusual. Yeah, why would high school girls come to visit my sister and then come talk to me, a junior highest? Why would that happen? So here comes the second question. What does that story suggest about me, guys? Any thoughts?
You're very interesting.
Well, just to clarify, they were talking to me.
Hmm.
I was not talking.
You were receptive. Yeah. to
Okay.
what they were talking
Good
about.
listener.
Good listener. Thank you, Brandon. What else? Yes, sir.
I think it fits under what Brandon said, but you're an incredible mirror.
Oh,
They received an energy back from you that hit them right in the chest, which made them stay in that space and keep coming back.
lovely. Thank you, dude. Yeah. So what those three, Brandon, Frank, and Seth, just did, just a side note here, what Brandon, Frank, and Seth just did, they did for me what they're offering to do for you, which is listen to your stories and extract your purpose from it. So based on their just quick assessment, notice they were able to do it immediately. Good listener, receptive, like I was able to give them, right? Is that what you said, Seth? Is that the word you used? Receptive? I was able to give, mirroring, able to give them something back. And Frank, I'm so sorry, I forget. What did you say?
I think mine was receptive.
Oh, yours was, I'm so sorry. So receptive, good listener, and mirroring back. Yeah, awesome. Thank you guys. So again, these guys, all four of them are practitioners. They're blueprint process practitioners, which means what they do all day long is they listen to people's stories who are trying to find their purpose, and they extract purpose players from these stories. So those three guys, just from the story that took less than 2 minutes to tell, they discerned that my purpose involves good listening, receptivity, and mirroring. And lo and behold, they're right. That's because that's what they do. That's what they do. That's what they love to do, is help people find their purpose through their stories. Yeah? Any questions, guys, before I go to the third thing? Okay. So the third thing then is very important. In Blueprint Process, we help you research your purpose. And then what, guys? What's the whole second phase of the Blueprint Process? Application. What's the point in finding your purpose if we're not helping you make the rubber hit the road with it? Yeah. So how have I applied it? Well, I can see it everywhere in my life. Looking back, I can even see it way back into my childhood, like that story suggests with my sister. But what I'm going to share with you by way of an example, I could share with you many, many, many examples of me loving to listen, be receptive, and mirror. But the one example I'm going to share with you is what I do for a living. So at that time in 2006 is when I discovered my blueprint and my purpose. And when I learned that this kind of stuff is what I love, yeah, I built a business around it. So it's the biggest example of my life. Maybe not the most impactful, but it's the biggest example of my life of how I took those three things and I created space for it in my life. And that's what the second half of the process is all about. Yep, here we've researched your items. Now let's make the rubber hit the road so that you can go out there and give the value that you're meant to give. All right, guys, any questions, comments? And then we're just going to go in this order, if you're okay with it. After you let me know if you have any questions or comments about what I just shared, we'll go Bill, Brandon, Frank, Seth. Is that okay?
Mhm.
Okay. All right. So any questions, comments about my share?
Yeah, you covered the three questions, but just to reiterate, the question one that we were looking at was
Story. What's the story?
and number
From
two,
characteristic one, right? We're just looking at purpose characteristic number one. So, yeah, what's the story from your growing up years? The second question is, what does that story suggest about you? So, the second question is, let's extract players, purpose players from that story. And then the third question, and thank you for asking for this reminder, is how are you today applying those puppies? Yeah.
got it.
All right. Thank you for that. All right, Bill, are you ready to share?
More or less.
Bring it.
Well, since I didn't read the homework,
That's
this is
okay.
this is by the seat of my pants, but it came in pretty quick, so it must be somewhat accurate. Um, about 60 years ago, when I was 6, I was in the hospital for 6 weeks, maybe a couple of months total.
Whoa.
I had gotten the proverbial chicken pox, and I did the thing that they tell you never to do. You know what that is?
Uh-uh.
I scratched them. Frank
Oof.
had it, and I guess I contracted septicemia from it, a form of blood poisoning.
Oh,
So back then medicine wasn't quite as advanced as it is today, and they thought a lot of that stuff would be highly contagious. They had me isolated for most of that 6 weeks. So over that period of time, I had the privilege of people waiting on me with rubber gloves and masks and gowns, and my parents weren't allowed to come in and see me. I could see them from the glass, but I couldn't go see them. And so for a long time, I spent a lot of time by myself, and to this day, I still enjoy solitude. But I also desire connection
Mm.
in
tell
a
us more
big
about that.
in a big way. Well, when you're compelled not to have other real human contact, the first inclination is to have human contact. So while I never was that kind of really super outgoing to kind of compensate for that, that's who I was. But I always tried to connect with people at their level,
Mm.
which to this day, as I've done other analytics to determine who and what I am by virtue of some of the things that come up through our study work and blueprint, um, I have determined that that's my role, that's my purpose. I'm a connector. And if I ever had any doubt about that, I just have to think back to that experience. And I remember what it was like looking at that good glass at my parents and not being able to touch them for 2 months.
Right.
Now, some kids that age would be just as happy that that didn't happen. But, when you're that age, you don't really think a whole lot about it. And in essence, that's what occurred.
I love that. So 6 years old, and we're able to extract blueprint items, purpose players. It's lovely. All right, guys, let's do the same thing that you did with me. Let's extract purpose players. And Bill helped us a little bit, but who has a purpose player that you'd like to mirror back to Bill?
Good luck.
Yeah,
Well,
Brandon.
I'm just gonna go with connector. I want to be the first one to say connector and just mirror back what Bill said.
Nice. I appreciate that. And I'm going to add to that, not just any connection. I'm cheating a little bit because I know your blueprint, Bill, and I've watched you over these many years, but I definitely know that for you, it has to be meaningful, impactful connection so that they walk away feeling a difference, feeling a significant difference. And often it's illuminating for them. And I imagine that your 6-year-old self in the room wanting to make every little connection that was there, whether it was a nurse with mask and gloves or not, being able to make it somewhat significant. Is that fair?
Mhm.
Mm.
So I want to bring up, yeah, I see you, Frank. I want to bring up something just for those of you watching this. Going through the blueprint process isn't about us telling you what your purpose is. It's more about what Seth said to me. It's more about us mirroring back to you what we see with the advantage of our objectivity and our experience, our blueprint. Like we know how to do this. We know how to view purpose in people. But we will always do what I just did with Bill, which is we'll suggest something like, hey, this is what I'm seeing. I feel like you are about significant, impactful connection. Is that true? Is that what you see? So just so you know, that's something that you can expect by going through the blueprint process is, yeah, we're going to mirror back to you all day long what we're hearing in your stories. And we're going to make sure that you agree with us because we're not the expert of you. You are. Anything else that we? Yeah, Frank.
As soon as Bill said human connection, my mind went to closeness, which actually is deeper than connection. Connection to me could be a networking meeting. Hey, I'm connected. But no, for me, it was like the lifelong thing of I want to get close, and the striving after closeness, and the thought that occurred to me the other day was I am closeness. I'm already closeness. I'm just
Nice.
looking for. It's kind of like that the connector part. It's like, yeah, well, I'm already. I exude closeness. That's what I do, and it's like, yeah.
So you're seeing that in Bill as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Nice.
mean, even somebody wearing a gown and a mask and a hood or whatever, it's like, yeah, I want closeness. Better than that,
Absolutely.
I'm getting closeness. Why? Because I already came with closeness. It was already there.
Nice.
So, yeah.
I like that. How about you, Seth? No pressure.
Well, now that everyone took the easy stuff,
Yeah.
I'm going to throw it out here, Bill, and just tell me if it makes sense. So, as usual, you have this incredible recall of these instances with very descriptive words. So I just imagine not only your ability to take a story and get very descript, but also I see this early development of this ability to stand in the gap with someone. And you do that in a very calm way, which is reassuring for someone that's in the gap between jobs, life storms, you name it. Your ability to show up in that place is amazing. And to stand within that and extract the detail really stands out to me.
Wow. How about you, Bill? What do you think of that?
That's taking Frank's comment about the it's kind of a remote intimacy. I do like to get close to people, but not so much so that they're uncomfortable. So you want to leave enough space there. And so when Seth brings up this notion of in the gap, that fits for me.
Love it. Way to go, practitioner Seth. Awesome. All right. So you're seeing here, those of you who are watching this, you're seeing, again, these practitioners know how to hear a story and discern purpose players. Seth's example, when he was watching Bill and intuiting that Bill loves to stand in the gap for people and hold that presence. Seth was intuiting that not only through the story, but in hearing Bill tell the story. So again, that's what practitioners are doing. They're not only listening to you tell the story, they're not only listening for details about the story. In fact, they're not really even interested in the story itself. They're looking behind the story. What's going on within this person because of the story? Because I'll tell you what, you could have 10 people that went through what 6-year-old Bill went through. And those 10 people would come out of that experience with very different memories, recollections, priorities, everything. So this is really important to understand about the blueprint process is we're not just here grabbing your stories to get stories. We're looking beneath the story to the person within, and that's where your purpose lies. So thank you. Thank you, everybody. Brandon, are you ready to share?
Yeah, I also, before I share my story, I want to double click on something that you said, which was we're not telling anyone what their purpose is. We're not telling you what you value. We're not telling you what your skills are. And I think that it's important to remember that we're telling stories right now, and then we're all practitioners kind of just making some observations here. However, when you're one on one with a practitioner, it goes there's more questions than telling. So there's Bill would share that story, and then I, as a practitioner, I'm very curious about maybe some other details of that, and maybe I ask you some questions a little bit deeper, like what was you were in that room. What was it like for you as a kid to all of a sudden be isolated for 6 months? Right. And we would start to go a little bit deeper in the listening of, like Tammy said, it's not the story, it's let's go a layer deeper and a layer deeper and a layer deeper and a layer deeper. And the benefit of that is that as you go deeper, you actually begin to start talking about things and seeing yourself in a way that you might not have seen yourself before. And so to me, the power is in you seeing what you didn't see before, not in me making an observation about you and your story.
I love that so much. And I'm sorry I did that right in the middle of you talking. However, let's just do that because you're absolutely right. If we want to give people the full experience, let's do that. So, Brandon, go ahead, ask Bill the follow-up question. And I just want to add that by asking when Brandon is 100% correct. There is gold. I mean, so the story offers, let's say, dimes and pennies. But as we ask follow-up questions to the story, we're getting into dollars, $20, $100 when it comes to your purpose and the power of your purpose. The power of your purpose isn't just in that surface layer of the story. You're absolutely right. Just like gold, you got to dig to get to it. And we do that with follow-up questions. It's one of the reasons why we're so valuable because when you're just doing this yourself, you don't have the luxury, you don't have that benefit of somebody asking you follow-up questions, and it's hard to ask yourself follow-up questions. So let's just give them a sample of this, shall we? Bill, are you cool with that?
Give it a shot.
Okay. So Brandon, I'm so sorry. I don't remember the question. I think something about how did you feel as a boy in that? So take that question and ask it.
Yeah. Well, I think part of when I'm sitting with a client as a practitioner, I'm just really trying to set my biases aside, my observations aside, somewhere over here. For me, that's always up and to the right. I don't know why. Setting things aside. Um, and just be curious about what you say and not assume that I know what you mean when you say it, even though it may be a common term or a common word, or it's like, well, I just told you that. What do you mean? I just like to assume, or I don't like to assume that I know what you're talking about. And so if you're my client and you start telling me this story, man, I was immediately curious about, well, wow, what was it like, Bill, as a 6-year-old kid being told that you had to be isolated in that room?
Well, they didn't tell me anything.
Ooh.
Mm,
I just couldn't see it. I just couldn't get to anybody else. So the natural inclination is, what's wrong with me? Why are people dressed funny around me? Why do I have to be I didn't have know the word time the word quarantine comes to mind, and that has profound impact on things too, and that I'm sure uh, impacted my approach to things, particularly those things that might be somewhat challenging. Where, I mean, they say the biggest threat one can have is to be ostracized from the group.
Mm.
It's the thing that keeps us all together as groups. Nobody wants to violate the tenet, because they might find themselves on the outside looking in. And at the time, obviously, I didn't know that, but uh, it backs up what Seth was talking about, the gap too, because I don't fear that.
Mm.
Ah,
Mhm.
I'm going to take your role here for a second, Brandon. Can you tell us more about that? Why don't you fear that?
Well, because I spent a long time, and I've spent many times in that position. Initially, it kind of evidenced itself as the devil's advocate. You know, you take the opposite opinion of what the group thinks, and you put that out there for comment. You know, you're in a session meeting and you ask something of the pastor that suggests that maybe you're an atheist, just to kind of see how they'll react to it. Most people wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that now either, but I mean, there was a time.
So you're something that's coming to me as a purpose player. So guys, again, if as you're listening to this, we're still extracting. As I mentioned, this is the goal. This is where we're starting to really get into the meat of the purpose. So Bill, would you say that you're comfortable with uncomfortable truths?
Yes, probably more
To-
comfortable with uncomfortable truth because I recognize it is the truth.
Ah, so then how would you say how do you apply that to your life today? And again, 24/7, whether you're working with a client or working with your granddaughter.
Well, I think somebody brought it up earlier, but for me, it's always been the story behind the story.
Mm,
Because normally when somebody tells you something, they have a problem, they've lost their job, whatever it is, they'll have a story to go along with that. And of course, it will clearly have all the biases that one would expect from that sort of situation. And, you know, I'll typically keep probing and move that just a little bit further. But again, you have to, the goal of the thing ultimately is to get to some resonant truth that that person recognizes, even if they didn't know it before. It'll just all of a sudden a light bulb will go off and say, that makes sense.
yeah, it's
And they'll
lovely.
accept it. They'll
Resonant.
accept it immediately. They'll have total acceptance of it. Whereas, I mean, I don't think in the years that I've done coaching work in general, even though I didn't know in many cases what I was actually doing with people, um, you knew when you stepped into that, because the person would, it was like they were chafing at the bit to get started on whatever it was they wanted to do. And whatever story was holding them back is no longer holding them back now, because they've gotten past that.
Because of your willingness to go story behind the story and get to the resonant truth.
Right.
Love that phrase. So yeah, that's another extraction that all happened because Brandon was willing to ask that follow-up question.
That's right.
Awesome. Thank you, Brandon. Are you game? Do you want to share your story?
Yeah, sure. Like Bill, I'm terrible at homework these days. I used to be pretty good at homework when I was a kid. Maybe that should be my story. I was always did my homework. Um, but today the story that kind of coming to me now, it's pretty quick story. But it just popped into my mind, so maybe like Bill's did. I was going into middle school, going into sixth grade, and I had up until that point played soccer and baseball, and I wanted to give football a try. And so I did. I signed up for, I didn't play any of the Pee Wee football leagues that a lot of other folks that was getting ready to join this kind of, I think we called it lightweight, but essentially it was middle school, sixth, seventh, eighth grade between Pee Wee and then high school football. I wanted to play football. And so I did. I went out for the team and I knew nothing about it except for what I had seen. I'd seen some football games on TV, of course, but I'd never played it before. And so I just remember not really knowing what the heck I was doing, but when given the chance to play, practice at a position, all of them were new because I'd never played before. So any position they put me in was, something new where I had to learn the role of that position and just kind of, you know, I had coaches who told me what to do, but basically I had to learn by practicing, by doing it, by, um, just failing at it and then figuring out, well, I don't want to do that again, or man, I better lower my shoulder when I'm running with the football and getting ready to get tackled instead of just standing straight up like a sitting duck. Um, I learned all that by kind of doing it. And fast forward throughout to the end of the season, I never ended up that first year, never ended up being like a starter or great football player or anything like that. But I did notice improvement. And then at the end of the year award ceremony, I ended up getting, the most coachable award.
Nice.
And I remember that the reason they gave, they said something nice about it when they gave me the award. But it was basically something to the effect of we could put Brandon in any position. He's never played any of these before. We could put him in any position and he would give it his all, do his best, take instruction well, try something new, right? And just try to get better. Try to learn, try to get better. And that jumped out at me when we started. Hey, can you think of a story? That's what jumped out at me.
I love it. So, guys, what are some purpose players you can extract from Brandon's story? Well, one thing I'll start with, and you kind of said it actually, is, and it's something that I know about you as well. You have an incredible drive to learn new things. You're not just willing, you have a drive to learn new things. And because you do, you've got the guts to do it. That discomfort that most people might feel at the beginning of a learning curve, you may feel it, but you push it to the side because you're so excited, you're so driven to learn new things. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'd say he's strategically fearless.
Oh, tell me, what do you mean by strategically
Well,
fearless?
he'll jump into stuff, but at the same time, he's very strategic in how he does it, and he's constantly learning as he goes along doing it. So, not much you
Nice.
can't do, guy.
Fascinating. So you just once again, you didn't just stop at the surface level of learning new things. You studied even further and discovered that nuance that he's strategizing in his learning as he's going. Fascinating. Thank you.
It's
Anything else?
it's
Yeah.
it's actually in my mind with my experience with Brandon is it speaks to what is behind this drive because when I he several weeks ago you showed this helicopter film then you with their helmet and I'm kind of going okay what is that drive behind attempting even that role
Mm.
and getting into that role and being effective at that role because it's kind of like okay we have an unnatural act of flying around in some mechanical and over the ocean and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, okay, what is that that puts somebody there and looking at a person that I might deal with that's going, my highest aspiration in life is to get into a rehab program, and versus like, no, I want to be a carrier pilot in a, combat or what. What is that? Is that attainable for somebody that is at a certain level that's going, my highest attainment is this? And it's like, what is that? Is that attainable? And actually to go into that inquiry where it causes people to go, yeah, yeah. I mean, man, what is next beyond X over here? Yeah. So
Are you asking Brandon what was the reason for the drive for him to become A Navy pilot?
Partly, but there's an underlying drive that has got him from his youngest days in football, baseball, whatever, to like here and now, and it's just like, wow. So if I could put my finger on it, what would that be?
Brandon?
It's my blueprint. My blueprint.
How so? Like what? Yeah, go on.
It's more
All in there.
complex. And I would say this for every person. It's way more complex than one thing. I would say that I'll connect it back to the story that I just told and how that's carried over throughout my life. It is being willing to put myself in uncomfortable and potentially uncertain situations
Mm.
because I had a connection to a vision of the direction I wanted to go in. I had an idea of where I wanted to be past that discomfort, past that uncomfortable thing, past that new thing. It wasn't to me about the thing. It was about a deeper a connection. I don't know that I would have by the way, I would not have articulated it like this as a sixth grader who just started playing lightweight football. Okay. But I was a normal sixth grader I just wanted to go play football. But now looking back, that routinely I would do that. I would play a new sport, try a new position, a new club at school, choose the Naval Academy, right? All these things because I think I just had a vision of why I wanted to, like what going through that would do for me. And at times, probably I would tell you it was like ego. It was like, I want to play football because my friends are playing football and maybe the cool kids are playing football. And, I want to pivot into that. As a sixth grader, that very well probably played into it. And, okay, I'm going to play. Well, I want to be the best. I want to be whatever I consider was like the coolest position, right? I wanted to be a running back. And so at the time I want to be a running back. So I try out for running back and I wasn't very good at it, but I kept doing it. I kept practicing to get bigger at it because I had a connection to something that I wanted to do, that I had a vision of, that I saw. And so nowadays I like to think, and certainly ego is still involved. It depends on how you define ego, but essentially it's, even if you say that you have a blueprint and you're trying to align life with your blueprint, there's an element there of, this is how I see myself and I'm trying to align things with that. And so that's kind of how I think about ego. Is very complex, right? Ego is not good or bad. It exists for everybody. And there was certainly some of that at play. And now, though, I think there's more. That's the direction I want to go because that's how I feel like that's how I can best express my purpose. And so I'm willing to go through some uncomfortable things and new things, transition out of the military, don't get a new job, stick with it, stick in the uncertainty of, is this thing ever going to take off? Am I ever going to make it? Am I going to be able to support my family with this? I don't know. I have a vision though, and I'm willing to stick with it and move and try to use it and kind of learn from it and see what I can do with it and move through to the other side of it. And that's how I would link the story of the sixth grader who got most coachable to where I am right now.
It's
Up
super
to
powerful.
Naval Academy, to be a pilot, all the things that you were talking about too, Frank, to right now.
Thank you. Yeah, you just took care of the third question, which is so if this is a player of mine, and by the way, just so you guys know, just to be clear, the purpose player he was extracting from his story and Frank's question is vision, how important it is for him to have a vision, and how that brings up the drive and helps him stay motivated even when the vision doesn't come clear or doesn't happen as quickly as he thinks it it will. So that's a purpose player, but that one right there, having a vision. And then thank you, Brandon, for taking it into application where today now you know that about yourself. And so if there's ever anything where you're going to have to really pull up your bootstraps, you're going to use that vision to help you do so. Is that correct?
Absolutely. If I can't tie what I'm doing to vision, purpose, it, it depend. Context always matters. There could be other people at play, the families at play, wife, kids. Okay. But most likely I am not going to stick with something if I can't, and it's tough and uncomfortable and I don't know what I'm doing. And it's like, and I have a whole bunch of other voices saying, what are you doing? What are you doing? If I can't see a vision, a purpose with it, then I'm most likely not going to put up with that for very long until I pivot to something else.
Yeah. Yep. There's two other purpose players there. Just so everyone understands, more extraction right here. The two other purpose players that we heard is he's willing to do what's uncomfortable. And then the second one I just forgot. Oh, willing to go against common belief or logic or human reasoning or even expectation to do what he feels he needs to do. Awesome. Thank you. Yes, Frank.
He used a word though, and I wrote this down. He said routinely.
Go on.
And I wrote down routinely stepping into, because it's like this, there's an unknown. He used the word uncertainty, and this is the stopper for a lot of people. It's kind of like the gateway that's in the impasse to purpose. It's like, oh no, I don't even know if I want to take the SAT or the LSAT or what. I don't know. And it's like step it and to actually not look at that like I'm girding my loins, I'm gearing up. It's like, no, this is just something that I routinely I go there. And it's like, wow, that's well, it speaks to one of my things, which is deploy. It's like, yeah, get it out there into the field. See what happens.
Yeah, nice. Good catch, that word routinely. So Frank, tell us your story.
Oh gosh, when you came out with your little video, for those people that know me, I'm a big nostalgia guy looking into the past. And I was already thinking about this. I was singing this song the other day, by the way. So when you brought this homework assignment up, it was amazing how my brain just clicked right into it. But when I was 8 years old, um, uh, uh, in elementary school, they brought this program in called Junior Fire Marshals. And just the other day, I was singing this song. People are like, "You're always singing, Frank. You're weird that way." And I'm okay with that. But it's Junior Fire Marshals are we. We're as watchful as can be. Yeah, that was a big song way back there. And along with the program, they showed this film that for the first time, I think in my brain at that time, I'm at 8 years old, this family perished in a house fire.
Oh.
And I could just feel my face. I was like, wow, this is like awful. I was never affected that way by a film. Anyways, at the end of the program, they awarded us this little gold-plated badge that we could wear on our shirt, and they gave us this manual. And I assembled a little team, and we would go around the neighborhood with our manuals with checklists in the back, and we were discovering hazards. we were uncovering things that needed to be removed or fixed and sharing them with the homeowners. Nobody told us to do that. It was just like, hey, look, this is going to be useful in the neighborhood because I don't want to have happen that what I saw. And it was like it was like rattled me. So the whole idea there is the vigilance, the emphasis on vigilance and the prevention of harm, the solver of problems, volunteering, and like the Sherpa, the protector, the guardian, the safekeeper. And where I see that showing up in my life now is it's not a coincidence that the line of business I am is in protecting and not just educating, but having that kind of authority by being educated and actually taking that education out and sharing it with people that are like, I don't know anything about hazards. Let me show you what is out there, and having people being like, I'm so glad that you did that. I mean, it was soothing. I could take a breath of relief now, and just stepping into that. And with Blueprint, it's like the solver of problems, if you will, but more of the servant,
Mm.
the servant that God has made me into, or actually made me aware that I already always was. Because again, at the age of 8 years old, it's kind of like, I don't know. I'm an invisible person when I'm 8 years old. Nobody really notices you until you get into trouble. But here I am getting awarded this badge, which, by the way, I still have around here somewhere, and maybe the certificate too. But really, it's like now that's significance. And now I can go out and do this. And I looking back, it was like there was this kind of like fearlessness of going around the neighborhood and pointing out that, these are things that need to be squared away. And it's kind of like, and people for the most part would say, wow, thanks. I don't know if they ever fixed anything, but there you are. It was like the mission was accomplished. The fire department came, they taught, they equipped me, and now I became important and authoritative and worthwhile. And so that's kind of like how that showed up for me.
Nice. Thank you. I appreciate you taking us through all three steps. So you shared the story, you extracted 4 or 5, maybe 6 different purpose players, and then you talked about how you bring that, one of the ways in which you bring that into your world today. Guys, I'm curious if you heard anything other than the purpose players that Frank mentioned, something that I felt right away when you said you could feel your face, just the way, the violence, if you will, of your reaction suggests to me a purpose player of empathy, where you just naturally feel what other people are feeling around you. Would you say that that's true? Frank, would you feel like that? Do you feel like that's true about
Yeah,
you?
while you were talking, I was thinking about a thing. It's still in my adult life now, as a former
Mm,
smoker, even.
mm,
I don't trust ashtrays and all that. I have to douse everything with water.
mm.
Just a weird thing, because it's like, just to make certain that ain't gonna be like, a hazard. So it's like, oh, it's kind of interesting. Why do you do that? Anyway, but yeah, you nailed it.
All right. Before we go on to Seth, anybody else? Brandon, did you have another player or?
Well, for me, what jumped out was the fact that you assembled a team of your own volition to go out and do this, which to me suggests leadership. I'm just curious, like where that has shown up for you since then.
Well, a comment was made years ago, and I was during my personal development, where the coach had said, "You do it first, Frank. I noticed that about you." And I'm kind of going, "Who, me?" Yeah, you step into the door first. Yeah, that's a strength. Did you know you had that? I go, "No, I didn't know I had that. In fact, I'm kind of see myself as cowardly." And he goes, "No, that ain't it. You look at this. You in the ropes course you were doing here, you're the guy who's always the first in line. You're getting ready to step out into the open space here with that belayer line. You do it first." And I'm kind of going, I never really recognized that. It was like a
Yeah.
weird, like, well, I don't know if I can do that. Even when I had a team before, it was like, I'm not really the leader of this team. I just kind of like by accident arrived here, and well, I might as well make do with this and make the best of it. So by that, thank you, Brandon.
That you're bringing up a great point, that sometimes what comes to us so naturally, we're not even aware of it. Other people see it in us, but we don't. Again, a nod to using one of the practitioners to help you identify your purpose, because we will often see in you things that you dismiss about yourself. Thank you, both of you. Seth, tell us what story you have.
Well, I want to mention just 2 things leading into it. it's this recognition that, like Brandon said, he didn't do the homework, which is awesome because now we're getting this realization that stories, in a lot of ways, are sometimes stored within us physically. There's an emotion that's there. Even as we go through some of these stories, if we close our eyes and kind of breathe into it, we can almost recognize where it's resting. And as practitioners, when I can step into that space with you and find this heart, mind, and soul connection, um, we start getting to the realness and the value of these stories. And as we've told today, a lot of these stories happened very early on, yet they set in motion these behaviors over time that were connected in other stories. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Um, so story that came to mind for me, and it's kind of funny as I was bouncing around a little bit, but I landed here. So as a kid, I grew up with this kid. His name was Matt Bennett. We met when we were 3, I think, and still stay in touch today.
Wow.
So our backyards touched each other. This was kind of the setup. And we both kind of laughed about 3 things. There was a constant message for both of our families, which was we were supposed to get out of the house. Um, we both were always broke. We had no money. Um, and then we had to be home by dinner. So in our world, we had this uh, school down the street that had this massive parking lot, which on skateboards and all that stuff, you could really get flying down this hill. And we always wanted to build a go-kart. But like I said, we didn't have any money. But what we did have was access to a carpenter in the neighborhood that had a bunch of scrap wood and boy, whatever else we could get our hands on. So unfortunately for Matt's sister, she was always our test pilot for any of these carts that we built. So on a few test runs of these jalopies that we put together with all kinds of scrap wood and like nails and like you name it, like whatever we could find to make something that would actually roll down a hill. Um, we took wheels off of broken big wheels. We took wheels off a Tonka truck that we used in the steering mechanism. Um, it was always this discovery thing that we had going. And something would be a problem for a while, and then one of us would come back with a solution that we were going to apply to do this thing. And we applied this over and over again, whether it was with go-kart things, whether it was building a fort in the backyard. Uh, we had built a zip line, and I'll stop at this one. We had built a zip line from a tree down to down to his dad's barbecue grill that we thought was heavy enough just to hold the rope. And again, sent the little sister up to test it out. And uh, when she fell, we were grateful as she bounced off the branches and then kind of landed on the ground, but didn't break anything. So it was all good. But it was just that discovery that sits for me. It's that um, being able to produce something out of nothing
Mm.
and what that built within us for addressing problems and that kind of stuff. Uh, so I'll leave you with that.
Love it. All right, guys, we got to be fast here. Let's extract a couple of players from Seth's story. What do you got?
I had idea generator, and I'll tell
Nice.
you one thing that I mean I had a bunch, but that's one that when you said you sent the sister, you always send the sister into test. Um I I see that as we need people who are idea generators, brainstormers, come up with these amazing ideas, right? And then there are people who actually don't love doing that, and there are people who love to go test them. test it out. Now, I don't know if she actually loved testing or not. Maybe she didn't love it too much after she was bouncing off branches and everything. But I just pulled out idea generator. I really heard that among a bunch of other stuff. But I'll stop there.
Love it.
I,
Thank you. Thank you. That's awesome.
I,
Frank, yes.
I like first of all, I'm fascinated by a 3-year-old that could actually develop a best friend
Oh,
and the yards connecting. But I kind of have an idea of how old you are, Seth, and you said this thing that you and Matt, you're still in communication. There's value and there's honor and there's loyalty there after all these years. And that's really what kind of jumped out at me. It was like, okay, there's a constancy. There's always a renewal with that because I just from my own experience, like we reconnect with people after many years that we knew once, but you know, it's more like just a kind of a fun thing. But there's this value thing that's like, no, I know you for a reason, and I stay
mm,
knowing you for a reason, and vice versa. And that's
nice.
very rare. And it's
Ab-
like I yearn for that. It's like it's part of the nostalgia thing, but it's like I want that. And you
Awesome.
have that.
Thank
And you
you.
have that. Yeah.
Thank you. Bill, how about you?
Well, I picked up on the ideation thing right away, because again, I kind of empathize with that. You know, when you grow up with not a whole lot of money, you will make you'll make all kinds of things out of stuff that, my parents used to say whenever, or when my dad would say whenever something was lost, a tool or something, he'd say it's probably in the backyard. It was probably being used as a gun.
Nice. I love it. Resourceful. Okay, Seth, take us out. Sorry, guys, we're at the top of the hour. Seth, can you just briefly, I'm so sorry to put you like this at the end, but would you share for us how you're using a couple of these things in your world today?
Yeah, it shows up for me just in the adoption communities that I work within. Um, when you're able to take this discovery and share it with others, it builds connection. And for people that yearn for a connection and haven't had people that stay present in these stories and are willing to stay in that space and willing to listen for value and willing to address some hard stories that maybe gave some messages that just quite frankly aren't true.
Mm.
Uh, it develops some growth and some awareness um, that really builds integrated communities. Um,
Oh,
I'll share, just quickly my essence from some other groups that I've worked within is bright light, worthy,
mm,
and lovable. So being able to show up for people like that with the beginning stories that we talked about and the goofiness and all of those types of things to do blueprint work and land with that kind of color, value, and humanness um, just is so worth the effort. To think that people wouldn't do this work kind of hurts our heart because there's so much value in this. It literally affects every relationship, everything that you could possibly do in your life. So we really hope you'll lean in and start doing this work because it's incredibly important.
dude, I could not have signed us off better than that. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks to all of you. We'll see you next time. If you guys are interested, we'll be doing this again the fourth Wednesday in April at noon Pacific. Thanks all to the practitioners. And hey, if you guys are interested in pursuing your purpose, we're here for you. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.